How to define marketing goals and budgets. We're going to blast through this presentation, but you're going to have to spend real time defining these. Without your budgets, you have no idea what you can spend in order to achieve your goals. And without goals, well, in the words of Zig Ziglar, if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. Goals dictate actions, actions dictate outcomes. If the meaning isn't entirely clear, I want you to think of the way you would train to run a marathon versus to powerlift competitively. Entirely different approaches because the goals are entirely different. Before we go any further, let's define what a goal is. We're going to use a framework called SMART. There are many other frameworks to define goals and to do long-term planning as well. But SMART means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-related. It's a good anatomy for a goal because when I ask people professionally what a goal is, they often name very big numbers like 10 million followers, raise at a $300 million valuation, or earn $1 billion. They may also go directional, things like be famous, gain recognition, make more money. The above set of goals are somewhat specific, somewhat measurable, almost never time related, and very often not appropriate to the business. In other words, they can't be achieved and there's no reason to think about them. It's not relevant to achieve 10 million followers if it's not going to do anything meaningful for the business, and it's just like that's a random side quest. Again, with the achievable, which is really the meat and potatoes of the whole presentation, raise at a $300 million valuation if it is time to raise money because you need money, and it is appropriate that you raise at a $300 million valuation. Don't plan out your theoretical $300 million valuation raise when you are in the process of closing a $25,000 seed round at a $400,000 valuation. Just don't worry about it yet. $1 billion, that's cool. We'll get to defining what earn might mean in a second, but are you anywhere in the ballpark of $1 billion? Is there any reason for that to be something that trips you up and that you focus on? Probably not. Those goals are only appropriate to a small subset of businesses, and they must be written as SMART goals because otherwise, how do you measure them, and how do you know if they're actually achievable? The below set, be famous and gain recognition, they're meaningless. They're so undefined as to be meaningless. On a scale of 5,000 followers on TikTok to being George Clooney, what is fame? On a scale of your mother says she's proud of you to winning a Nobel Prize, what is recognition? I realize for some people you may need to reverse the Nobel Prize and the mother saying that she's proud, and I'm sorry for you people, but no matter what, make more money is the bane of my existence. Look, make more money usually means revenue or profit or margin. Those three things can all increase in a positive trajectory together, or you can increase any one of them at the expense of any other one or two. No matter what someone has chosen, you got to ask the same few questions. Compared to what? In other words, what is point A? By how much? You want to raise revenue. What is point A? What is the revenue? How much do you want to raise it by? What is point B? And by when? That's the transit time between point A and point B. Then you ask the question, at what cost? That's where you start figuring out if the goal is achievable, and realizing the costs is when most people change their goal. If someone says double revenue in 12 months, that is a clear target to aim at. There's a timeline to it. Let's figure out what it takes to achieve that goal using a process called backcasting. More about backcasting in a minute, I promise. Okay, you have one location. Let's just say it's a cafe. You have one location. You are nearly at the max level of revenue that you can achieve. You're going to have to start a second location in order to make any more money at all, or you have to change your business model. How are you going to get that second location? You have to raise money, whether it's a loan or it's equity funding or you are inserting your own capital into the business. You have to get money. Otherwise, you aren't going to be able to hire the staff that are needed to achieve that goal. Either by way of funding or by way of just hiring managers to operate that new location, you will likely have to give up control. You may also have to make less money for a period of time. That's the point when a lot of people say my goal is actually increased by 10% over the next 12 months. Goal setting allows for reasonable expectation setting. One of my favorite people was one of Push ROI's worst clients. The reason is he refused to define either budgets or goals. For budgets, he said somewhat reasonably, he could just write checks. If we told him why we needed to spend money, he would spend money. And in terms of goal setting, he said he was not a child who wrote down how much money he wanted other people to make him. He just pushed to earn more. I think most of us could see the problems from a mile away. Here's what revenue would have been estimated as for a business typical of the sort he had. This is revenue and expenses over the first 3 months. Typically, once you've opened your doors, you have a period where your main concern is training staff. Is everyone showing up on time? Do they know how to do their jobs? Are the floors clean? Is there toilet paper in the bathroom? Everyone knows how to use the point of sale system. When something goes wrong, who do they call? And does everyone know that? Then you establish your baseline. This might take 1 week, this might take 2 weeks, but baseline continues training and starts to figure out, are there items in stock that no one is ordering? How many people come in off the street? What is the best way to approach people? Is there any confusion about our signage? Are we getting a lot of the same question over and over? And is there a better way we can approach answering those questions? Once you have established your baseline and you have trained your employees, at least to a level where they are operationally competent, then you start marketing. Marketing is going to create a big spike in expense, but a big spike in revenue. I would expect to, for at least the first week, maybe month of marketing, still lose money because you're spending a lot more on marketing than you will ever spend again. This is launch time. Once you've launched, you've finished your marketing budget, and you're now into normal course of operations with normal marketing budgets, you should be able to hit operational break even. At that point, you then start slowly creeping up your profit until you're able to pay back all of the money that has been invested in the business and start paying dividends to yourself or to investors. That's a pretty reasonable expectation of a business like this gentleman had. However, expectations are going to exist even without stating goals, and he didn't want to set reasonable expectations. He wanted to push for more revenue no matter what. So this is what he thought his revenue might look like. A bunch of beliefs in this that are wrong. We'll explain them piece by piece. First, he assumes staff don't need training. They'll learn on the job. No one ends up crying in a walk-in freezer. They're just going to learn on the job. They'll buck up, buckaroo, and no matter how many clients or customers we send them, they're just going to have to figure it out. Okay, problem. He also expected marketing was going to be sending a ton of clients to his business and that it had to start way before the business was open. That is acceptable for some businesses. Here's the issue. He wanted to start marketing while they were still doing construction on the first location, meaning we had no idea when the certificate of occupancy would be granted, and therefore no idea when we could tell people to show up to the business. Push ROI refused to do marketing until he knew when he was going to open. We told him it would be a waste of money, and he felt we were very lazy for that. Instead, even though we were paid hourly and were making much less money, we offered to help him plan, something he wasn't really too keen on, because again, revenue was going to be more, no matter what revenue currently was. He also expected that marketing would be so successful that his business would be at an operational break-even starting in day one. Again, staff didn't need training. Marketing starts before you know when the business is opening, and operational break-even is therefore immediate. Oh, he also expected explosive scale at around about week 5. And the level of potential revenue he believed his business had was more than a comparable business inside of Disneyland earns. I know that for sure and for certain. Let's look at a more reasonable goal or maybe a projection. A friend said he wanted his revenue to be 1 to 2 million a month within a year or two for the business he was starting. So let's go through the elements and see, is that a smart goal? Well, is it specific? It's not really that specific. If you rewrite it as a million a month in revenue within 2 years, that's a fine goal. Is it measurable? The rewritten goal is measurable. The initial goal is also kind of measurable in that you can measure both time and money, but there's a margin for error of 23 months and $56 million, which means you can have someone think they are very much on track and another person very upset because nothing is close to where it's supposed to be. Was it relevant to the business? And the answer is yes. It is not an unrelated side quest. Sometimes people will come up with weird things because they want to do them. And that's where you get someone that says, we need to do a play in order to market my, dental office. And you say, well, how are you going to market the play? And that may sound far-fetched. It's really happened to me. But it also happens every day. Someone says, we need more Twitter followers because that'll lead to more people who subscribe to our email list. And then people who subscribe to our email list will eventually buy from us. The goals are either not relevant to the business or are horribly inefficient. And moving these out of order, is it time related? The goal's somewhat time related, and it's totally acceptable to have goals within a period of time, a window of time. In fact, when we were planning out that cafe that I mentioned earlier, the reason that those milestones are all flexible is because we don't know exactly when the business opened. And so you plan them within a window of time in relation to each other. Also, time related allows for measurability. And if you don't set some reasonably time related goal, you have room to argue you never failed. If I said I wanted to run a marathon within my lifetime, I haven't failed until I'm dead. If I say within 10 years, I know at about 9 months out that I need to start training because I have been waiting for 9 years and 3 months, and I better start working, otherwise I'm going to fail to meet my goal. Was the goal achievable? This is the crux of the entire presentation and the most important portion of being able to define goals. It's how you start planning. The answer is yeah, the goal was kind of achievable. The reason I say this, similar companies had been able to scale that quickly. Those companies had experienced marketing, HR, and operations staff. They were able to get new employees. They had a machine built to get new customers. And they were able to scale because of aggressive expansion with reasonable funding in order to meet the needs of that aggressive expansion. How did we figure out what was achievable? The answer is we forecast and we backcast. Forecasting is a projection, the most likely outcome of current efforts or plans with the existing resources, at least in this context. Backcasting is the reverse of that. You start from the goal and you figure out what it's going to take to reach the desired outcome. It looks something like this on paper. You're here, your goal's way on over here, and backcasting says in order to meet that goal, you're going to need to spend $6 million. You can forecast and say, how close can we get to that goal? And if forecasting puts you at, 10, 15% of the way there, you got to adjust the goal, unless you're willing to do the things needed to get the funding required based on the backcast. If you are nowhere near where you need to get in order to achieve your goal, not changing your goal means you're going to fail. Again, you must adjust the goal. And I hear you saying, well, that sounds great, but how do I forecast and how do I backcast? And the answer is a whole lot of research. You can start by really examining the industry, looking at Porter's 5 forces. Spend a lot of time on this. Do some Googling. Maybe hire a market research firm or a marketing firm that's good at doing this sort of research. Then you start doing a comparable company analysis. You look at companies that are direct competitors in the same region, direct competitors in a different region, but not actually competing, though the same offering, companies more broadly in your industry, companies with a similar business model, blah, 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 blah. And you compare yourself to them and you see how you stack up. How does your company stack up to these other companies? Then a competitor marketing analysis. Ideally, you're going to use direct competitors in the same area. But if you don't have those, look more broadly. This is something, as all of these frameworks are, that is aided heavily by having expertise in the topic you are researching. There are tools to look at how much a company is spending with digital advertising on certain channels, but print and broadcast advertising sometimes require a whole lot of estimation, knowing what ads cost and where ads are running. There are some firms that will collect this data as a whole so that they can look at it and you can examine it and put it into your model. Estimating the cost of offers redeemed, of public relations, and of digital organic, that requires that you know what things look like in that industry. It requires that you know how to bid out some sort of digital organic marketing campaign and that you can estimate the cost based on the success someone is getting. Anyway, once you've done your competitor marketing analysis, put that into a beautiful matrix chart, look at who's spending a lot of money very inefficiently, who's spending a lot of money very efficiently, and who's spending very little money, both inefficiently and efficiently. That way you can see what efforts your business would benefit the most from doing. Don't look at like some unrelated business that happens to be your next door neighbor. They're not the same as you. Look at actual competitors before you estimate what's going to work and what's not. And I would also do a pest analysis where you examine political, economic, social, and technological factors, both currently and potentially looming, so that you can figure out what to expect within your first year and 5 years of business or continued business. Pest analysis is not going to predict everything. You are very likely to miss COVID. Almost everyone did. In fact, I think everyone was a little surprised by the scope of COVID 19. Anyway, once you have done that analysis, I would strongly recommend a SWOT analysis, where you're going to examine your own company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and each one of your direct competitors. You should know everything about your industry, everything about what's going on with your competitors, and then you can start building a plan. You can use every framework and build all sorts of beautiful charts, but success is going to require research. Ultimately, it all comes down to the quality of your research. Forecasting and backcasting accurately are going to depend on what data you trust. You can choose to trust quality data, or you can choose to rely on your assumptions. And if you use quality data, there is no guarantee that you will forecast or backcast accurately. You can always miss something. Sometimes good businesses fail, sometimes bad businesses succeed. But you are much better off using good data, because assumptions are very easy to make, very easy to miss, and can absolutely destroy your business. I cannot tell you the number of times I have seen some business model that says our serviceable obtainable market is much bigger than a total addressable market is. And the reason that they guessed that is because they made an assumption without doing any research at all. People in the know understand that the total addressable market is smaller than other people assume their total obtainable market will be. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. If you disliked the video, go ahead and leave a comment that says it sucked. No matter what, thank you for watching. I've been Mason Pelt for Push ROI.